Hello and welcome to You Matter. Hello and welcome to this latest episode of You Matter with sports therapist Matt Phillips. Matt is ostensibly going to be talking about managing work with runners, but because it's the You Matter podcast, the conversation really is around working with runners and adopting an approach that supports your well-being and definitely the well-being of your client as well. It actually is a discussion that could be applied to working with any kind of client or patient and could probably be applied to general life and management of your own self-care and attitudes to change and things like that. So I really hope you enjoy the episode. Sit back, enjoy it, and I'll be back at the end. So, hello and welcome to this latest episode of You Matter, where I am absolutely delighted to return a favour actually, because my guest Matt Phillips had me and Joanne Elphinstone as a guest on his podcast recently, and we just had such a great time with Matt. He is an absolutely brilliant host. We enjoyed the experience and really appreciated his style of hosting, making us feel really welcome, asking great questions. So, Matt, hello. It is a great pleasure to reciprocate and have you on You Matter.
Thanks very much. No, it was doubly as much fun for me as it was for you and Joanne. So yeah, that's great. It's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this. Obviously, I'm a massive fan and love your work, so it's great. I really appreciate the invite.
No, thanks, Matt. So, for those of you that don't know, Matt Phillips is a sports therapist by trade, creator of Run Chat Live, that's his business, and also, as we've just intimated, host of the Soft Tissue Association podcast, which amazingly goes out every week. And Matt's just told me he's past 230 episodes. So if you haven't checked out that podcast yet, do go. There's a huge amount of
Sports
content
Therapy
there.
Association,
Oh, I'm
just
so
in
what did I
case.
say? So I said soft tissue, didn't I?
It's very confusing these days. That's part of the problem of our industry. But
I
yeah, we
actually
are the
even wrote that on my bit
sports.
of paper as well.
That's fine. It is a problem.
Sports Therapy
Therapy. It's
Association
just
web
beautiful.
podcast, not website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So today's conversation is generally about runners. It's about assessing runners. It's for anybody that works with runners. We're going to be talking about injury and prevention with runners. So, all of you listening, I'm sure, will come across runners in some way, shape, or form, and I'm sure an awful lot of you are runners yourself. But as ever on this podcast, my take on it is always, what does this mean about clinician well-being? What's in it, under that topic? And we will get to that very soon. But Matt, before we do that, could you just outline a little bit for me, in a bit more detail, what you do and how you got to this stage?
Yep, sure. So, how far do we go back? Tottenham Court Road in the 1990s, doing a YMCA fitness instructor
That
certificate.
just
That's
makes
where
me
it all
think of great record
started.
shops.
It was a great area to study. But yeah, and it goes back to there. It's somebody who didn't do very well in their A levels, mainly because I was introduced to girls or young women when I was 16, suddenly in sixth form. And yeah, the two didn't
Common
combine very
problem.
well. You can imagine. I was learning too much communication in those 2 years rather than actually studying. But yeah, so I ended up, but it was fine because I wouldn't know what to have done anyway. But ended up getting into gyms because I was very much into that and martial arts. And that basically led to me eventually doing National Academy of Sports Medicine. We've fast forwarded to around 2003 now. Certified personal trainer, worked with David Lloyd for about 5 or 6 years, and that was it was a great time because 2003 was the time when kind of guru took off. I think it was probably combined with the internet, but that's when you had your Paul Checks, your NASM, you had your
Mm,
Gary Gray's, Gray Institute, and suddenly, probably no discredit to them, but because of the internet, suddenly we started getting people becoming too famous and too followed and almost cult status. And I actually, yeah, I was guilty of jumping on the train because I was still then at an age where I just worship these people coming over from California to teach us with their incredible posture and super
mm.
buff, natural physiques. But then I realized maybe a couple of years later thanks to rubbing shoulders with a lot of people like yourself and the rest of the Twitter crew around that era of 2014, 15, that a lot of the stuff which was coming out there with core stability and the whole kind of Paul Hodges' work with transversus abdominis and activating it and all of that, getting people to squat on fit balls and all of this stuff which I was preaching and making good money out of was actually a bit questionable. And we kind of,
Mm.
it was the same time as the fascia research. I'd also got involved in soft tissue therapy because I wanted to kind of get involved with that as well as the rehab side of things. So, and that was the same repeat story. I worked my way up. The massage stuff was very nice, very holistic. Again, a few of these traditional ideas which we have to kind of move on a bit from, like breaking up scar tissue, etc. But then I did the level 5 out of interest just to get myself up there, and that was full of an awful lot of misconceptions and kind of structuralist based ideas, which again I realized, well, what's going on here? There's a theme here. I've been taught stuff
Mm.
and realizing I'm having to question my own identity. And I'm okay now because I'm old and withered and I can accept it. But at that age, I remember twice paying money and learning something which then made me question myself and what was I doing and felt very disempowering. And also with runners, I mean, when I was a runner myself and decided to settle down working with runners, and the same thing happened again. I got involved in gait analysis. We were one of the first gait analysis clinics on the South Coast using kind of 3D gait analysis. And once again, there's me pretty much selling the whole overpronation idea and getting involved in shoe prescription. And then Ian Griffiths turns up and questions me about overpronation. And thanks to him and other great podiatrists and Craig Payne and people like that, and Simon Bartold, that educated me. But again, I was like, what is it about people telling me stuff that isn't true? And that kind of cutting a long story a little bit shorter kind of put me in the position where I really wanted to help clinicians deal with that because through getting into the trade in, like I say, in the 90s and having to go through these experiences, realized how distressing it can be and how it makes you want to chuck everything away, and the whole imposter syndrome. I think it's still prevalent in society today. Unfortunately, education might be getting a bit better thanks to kind
Mm.
of people we know in common, like Anna-Marie Mazzieri and Mike Grice, with regards to soft tissue therapy. But there's still an awful lot of information being put out there, either unintentionally or these days with the internet and the easy it is to build a business, intentionally bad information that just sells with clickbait.
Yeah.
So that's my role now. I also teach. I hold the gate courses and everything, but everything really, I try and be a pleasant conduit of education and information to help people realize they haven't got to throw everything out. They're still amazing individuals. We're not tweaking that
Mm.
much, but what we are tweaking could make a huge difference to not just your clients, but also to you and your well-being.
Yeah, I think you tread that line brilliantly, Matt. So it's when you say I help clinicians with that, what I'm hearing is this sort of two strands to what you do. There is the teaching people to work with runners, and then there's helping them with the identity stuff that might come up that you've just described. That you know, some of I imagine what you're teaching now might challenge some people's view based on what they've been learning before. So is that a correct assumption that there's kind of you know teaching the work and then there's supporting the clinician as they learn these new approaches?
Definitely, I think so. And we are in an era where, particularly after COVID, which kind of made everyone a little bit, or most people a little bit more fragile, it also kind of augmented the amount of communication between therapists, which is a wonderful thing. I think people are more receptive now to listen to each other, which is great. But again, it's how the quality of information that's getting put out there is really important as well. So what I try and do this, I mean, through the podcast, I've got my dream job of talking to people like yourselves and other experts, and I absorb it all and analyze it, and then I just try and put that together with my own experience to help other people who all need slightly different things, which is
Mm.
important as well. There's no one perfect CPD or presentation for everybody. It's just reacting to the person in front of you, which is what we should be doing with our patients and clients as well. That's the big thing I think of. And one thing that is my personal bug is we preach about how we're supposed to be looking after clients and patient centered and all that and treating them with wonderful language and empathy. But on social media in particular, when it comes to therapists helping other therapists, most of it these days, tragically, is mocking somebody else or calling somebody else out, saying how rubbish, poo-pooing it. I hate the word like BS in a post because everything we did 10 years ago could be classified as
Mm,
BS. It's not, it's
mm,
just something we've evolved from. So I'm probably overprotective of that. I think therapists need to be kinder to therapists.
yeah.
Especially if their goal is education and helping our industry move forwards, we should treat each other as we're supposed to be treating our clients.
Why do you think that is? Why would we do that to each other when we're in the business of, um, as you say, actively not doing it to the patients and the clients that we work with?
You know what? I shouldn't be a hypocrite because I wrote about this in the wonderful MSK Mag at the beginning of the year, and I wrote a piece saying gait analysis is it a waste of time? And it was an ironic kind of title. I didn't mean that at all. Gait analysis is very useful. It's just not for the reasons we thought. But my point of writing was in 2013, 14. I was guilty myself in the first early therapy expos of feeling like I had so much to say in so little time, and it was very much a pedestal. And I would use graphics and probably all of my communication skills in a slightly sinister, evil way of kind of mocking what was missing. I don't even like using the word myth anymore because to me that is it's a nasty way of judging something,
Mm,
making it sound like it's a fairy tale and it's something that never existed. It's not. It's just things we've evolved from. So, and I looked back at that and thought, oh, I wouldn't change it because that was just me at the time. But now, the last two or three times at Therapy Expo, and definitely my course, much more now is about not mocking anything. The same way as with clients, we should never say, oh, the last person you went to was obviously an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about because the client's going to go, I don't like you inside
no, it's not a
internally.
nice thing.
And we shouldn't do it to each other as therapists. So I think some people are still maybe stuck. That, oh, no, it's for good intention. They think that by exhibiting the poor information out there and maybe in a slightly mocking way, that maybe that informality helps create a bond and alliance with your fellow therapists. Maybe I'm sure there's good intention. I know there is. I know people who know that
Mm,
I wince when I see their posts and emoticons and things and smiley faces. And I hate all the comments that come with it of all the people laughing and kind of it's pack mentality, which drives me
yeah.
mad.
Mm.
So I think it's through good intention, but for me, I don't. I think it's probably holding healthcare back on a level higher than a lot of people
Yeah, and
realise.
that's a an angle I wanted to pick up actually, that holding healthcare back, because you're right, there has been this fairly toxic element to therapist communication. Um, but I suppose I also have a bit of sympathy for um, what I sense is a frustration of people holding on too long, even in the face of new evidence. Um, and that might be directed as anger at the person expressing that thing, but I guess the bit I do have some sympathy with is impatience in a lot of us. I'm nearly 30 years into this career now, and I wanted things to change when I was 21. And some of them have, but a lot of them haven't. And do you agree that sometimes the frustration is actually, come on, guys, there are better places to go than this. We don't need to hold on to that stuff out of fear.
I do, and I don't get as frustrated these days because I see it in the same way as a therapist getting frustrated that their client or patient hasn't done
Hmm.
the exercises. We know that non-compliance is a big issue. I used to, as a younger therapist, go, oh, how are they going to get better if they don't do what I tell them? And you lay the blame on the patient. When reality, it's because you've given them too much. You haven't explained the importance of it in that. You haven't said it at the right time. It's all to do with behavior change and that, and the classic elements of coaching. So I kind of see it the same way. Yes, it's frustrating if you see the industry isn't changing, but I'd also, at my age now, reflect and think, is what I'm doing actually helping these people change? Or
Mm,
maybe my exclamation marks and my shouts and my swearing or whatever it is, maybe that isn't helping as many people as I thought, because I don't,
mm,
if we look at education, which I love the parallels between education and therapy because there's so many parallels in terms of eliciting responses and not kind of directing, but kind of working together. I can't think of one instance where shouting at somebody or belittling someone
mm.
else actually helps in education. The people in your class or your lecture or whatever, some of them might cheer you and be fan people, but most of them are not going to learn. They're not going to
Mm,
take anything away. They're not going to reflect, and it's not helping them become more critical or thoughtful. So I think it's up to us to realize if yeah, your original question, sorry, if the industry is not changing or certain people aren't changing, then I take that more as a, oh, how can I reframe what I'm saying to
mm,
actually help them? Maybe
yeah.
it should be done face to face instead of through social media. Hey,
Mm.
who'd have thought? So yeah, I get the
Yeah, that's a
frustration,
really good
but
point.
yeah.
Yeah, are we actually part of the problem? Are we creating the conditions and the environment that allow people to move into that quite uncomfortable space of realizing some of the things you held dear or perhaps needing a bit of a reframe and a move on? Yeah, that's a very good point. So let's take this back to working with runners. Um, what would be more helpful to talk about, Matt? We could either talk initially about specifically the things you do teach that are perhaps different to what you might have learned or taught in the past. Or you might feel it's more helpful just to go straight into talking about why that's actually relevant for clinician wellbeing and helping them create this identity shift. I guess my question is, do we need to do the background of what you're actually teaching and talking about in respect to treating runners?
I think I could summarize it quite easily. And the fact it's runners, it could apply to basically it's a evolution moving on from the whole structures approach,
Mhm.
blaming issue in the tissue sort of thing, which is well documented and people have been talking about it for a long time. It's just with running industry, it's just even more intensified because well, because of a few factors. I mean, running has the highest prevalence of injury out of any sport. Depending on the
Does it?
data, yeah,
Didn't even
it's
know that.
huge. And it's when you look at the actual data, it differs quite a lot because of what population you're looking at or what you regard as a running injury. Should a blister be part of the sample or whatever? So
Yeah.
if you take a midline, it boils down to more or less, if I remember rightly, something like three running related injuries every 20 weeks of running, which is pretty
Okay.
poor. It's like that means you're going to have to pay somebody or look for help or something or not be able to do what you love doing three times every kind of 20 weeks, which I think if you did that on any other sport, you'd give up or go home or just not pay for it anymore. But the thing with running is you don't have to pay for anything and you
Mm.
can go out any day you like. All you need is a pair of shoes, which you don't have to necessarily spend a fortune on. So there is a danger of being able to do it too much, too soon, too often, and that whole sort of thing. But because there's such a high pool of injury, I think that opens the doors to all sorts of manner of ways of helping these people. And there's a new way of stopping certain running related injuries every time you turn on the internet or something. There's some new way of doing it because the fact is, the thing that interests me is not so much the prevalence, it's the fact that it hasn't really come down much since the 1980s, which is another interesting fact, which means that despite all the stuff we're doing and have been doing with the technology, there's something we're still missing.
Mm.
And for me, it seems the more I look into it, it seems more glaringly obvious. But the data's starting to realize now that although like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it was all about dismissing the asymmetry, just dismissing the biomechanics, or rather, we haven't got proof that just because you've got
Yeah.
femoral adduction, internal rotation, then some people will get patellofemoral pain, some people won't, and some people with the perfect running form still get injured. So, but we didn't have much to replace it. But what I love about research being done now is they are looking at the mental health of the person. They're doing kind of questionnaires to see about that person's mental well-being, how they feel. And there's some really interesting data coming up showing links between someone's actual kind of psychological profile compared to how likely they are to get injured.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think that's probably why we've got so much difference in the biomechanical side of things because you can have 560 runners and put them through what you feel is the same kind of control, but they've all got all sorts of different memories and things going in their lives, all sorts of different ecosystems. So it's not surprising, I think that's the fact we're missing out on, that some of them get injured and some of them don't,
Yeah.
regardless of how they're moving. So when it comes to helping runners and working out why someone's getting injured or why they seem to have a higher risk of getting injured by doing a certain thing in a certain shoe at a certain time, I think it really does boil down to seeing what makes that individual person in front of you tick. I think that's
Mm.
what's missed out so much through education. and this kind of structural approach, we're still making a hypothesis from the objective assessment. We're still looking at how they move rather than, as you and Joanne sort of demonstrate and exemplify through coaching, is sitting back and letting the runner tell us, or not even the
Mm.
runner, the person tell us what's going on, where that kind of psychosocial load is coming from.
And I
Um,
love that that's your
yeah,
answer. Why didn't I expect that answer? Gosh, that's yeah, I'm almost surprised at myself that I didn't expect that. But I love that that's the first, extra factor that you are bringing in there. Of course. So taking that um, sort of mental state, mental well-being element into consideration. Well, would it be okay if we assume that that is indicative of one of the major differences in the way that you might teach
that's
within management of
yeah,
runners?
that's why I call my course a modern approach to gait analysis, is because it is. I'm very much focusing. I'm not forgetting the biomechanics. You need to learn the gait cycle. You need to learn causes and things,
Mm,
injury management. But you really, it's not just accepting that there's a person and treating the runner as opposed to the running injury. It's now opening the doors to what's not simple at all. But now you're suddenly getting into behavior change. You're getting into like coaching. You're getting into how to help how to first discover how that individual is going to reveal what they need, because that could take a lot of work.
yeah.
And then you've got to work out when the right time to start, making these changes and suggest behavior changes and keeping them happening, because and then you've got on top of that, that's an area where a lot of therapists are just not skilled with, and there's a
Mm,
danger here. It's all very well me saying, oh yeah, you've got to treat the individual, not the running injury. How the hell do I do that? And that can lead
mm,
to even more imposter syndrome and people worrying about, can I still charge this person 50, 60, 70 pounds if we're just having a chat? And that's kind of brings in that. I try and a lot of my course, and I keep saying it in the last course, I must have said it 100 times. It's just about, my biggest goal is building your confidence.
mhm,
Some of you might have walked in here thinking you're the most confident person in the world, but I'm putting thoughts your ways which are going to strip away that confidence you had, because I'm taking the power out of your hands now. I'm creating this power you're going to need in your ears and maybe a little bit more in the mouth. So it's a new world, and yeah, so that's what my modern approach is. Yeah,
And yeah, it would be no surprise that that's all music to my ears. And the phrases that spring to mind are that you're accepting that you're working with uncertainty, and then rather than telling yourself that now you've got imposter syndrome, it's just no, I'm just dealing with uncertainty and I'm staying with it, and that's going to naturally give me feelings. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong. Um, yes, and your bit about can I still charge the person the same price for this? Um, I don't know about you, but quite often for me, that question comes on the back of a realization that you'll probably be doing less within a session, or in theory, achieving less, or taking longer to get to the point of knowing what to put into a rehab program or when to start it, even. Is that all in line with what you're saying?
definitely. And it's a little bit dangerous as well, because not only are you having to manage that, but your client or patient's got expectations as well. They've
Yeah.
been brought up for the whole of their lives, thanks to the kind of our medical way of doing things, of that you are going to do something to them. They're going to have some physio, they're going to take a pill, get an injection. So you've got to be careful that you're not giving this all wonderful new stuff to the client, and they came along just wanting a massage, or they wanted you to fix them in 2 sessions. So it's a tricky area. It's not undoable. It's just you've got to be, you yourself have got to change your frame of
Mm.
mind in order to make these behavior changes before you can help your client, maybe.
And do you get the situation? We definitely get it in physio, and I have it reflected back to me. Oh, I started introducing this process, and the client's face was just, what the hell is going on here? And some clients actually saying, this isn't what I came for. I'm used to this and I want this. Um, how do you help people deal with that? I guess it's a confrontation of sorts.
Yeah, we talk about that on the course. I think a lot of it is in the preparation. A lot of it is
Hmm.
tweaking what's on your website. It's about maybe doing more pre-calls before they come in.
Right.
You've got to make that what's going to happen. Well, no, that's totally not true at all. You're not going to say what's going to happen at all. You've got to kind of get across to them that it is a flexible, fluid state where depending on what information they give you, your treatment may change. You're going to be working with them. And there's it's not an easy sell. It's far easier a website with bullet points of we fix this. You've got sciatica, we'll do this. Much easier, and it can look much nicer. It's much less fluffy. But that's something which this is where I think collaboration really comes into it. And again, thanks to guests, I did an episode with Andy Hosgood and Andy Thomas,
Mm.
and it was all about collaboration. And I think a great way, the best way for clinicians to put these strategies into place is just to talk to each other,
Yeah.
because the worst you can do is try and redesign your whole website, try and reinvent the wheel. Where if you talk to the other five therapists in your area without fear, saying what you're thinking of doing, three of them will probably go, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I've got the same thing going on. I listened to that podcast as well with the Sports Therapy Association
Yeah.
podcast. How do we do this?" And that could save so much problem and anguish and beating yourself up and getting things wrong. And that's what we should all be doing. I mean, it sounds again easier than in reality because there's a lot of fear and worry about sharing these details with the competition. But
Mm.
it is something which I think can really help. And once you open that door and start collaborating, I think, as the Andes was saying, that fear you had initially starts disappearing pretty quickly because you realize, why don't I do this before? This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. It really is.
I
It
I
helps.
think that does speak to a way to facilitate significant change within professions as well, because I was about to ask you a question which you've just answered in a
Sorry, I do
different
that.
way. No, it's great. Um, I was going to ask, so when you're with a client in that confrontation, or no, not in the confrontation, when you talked about copy on your website, or maybe how you might talk to a client when they're first with you, I wondered whether you might overtly say, I, excuse me, I work in this way and it might be very different to other therapists that you've seen, which, on the face of it is a perfectly reasonable thing to say. But on the other side, you could say, well, that's you slightly passively dissing what other people do as opposed
Mm.
to the way I took your answer when you're talking about collaboration is if we're talking to each other and saying, oh, what, how have you expressed this on your website and how do you talk to patients? So that actually we're just saying this is how we're going to work together, not it's different to anything else or it's different how I used to work. It's the more of us that are saying this is how I work, that then becomes more of the norm of what people are reading and hearing. Maybe, that's one of the ways, not the way, but one of the ways we start to make significant shifts together.
Yeah. I think that's important. I mean, I was born, I don't know why or where it came from, but I was kind of born a bit of a linguophile. I was doing debating
So
at school when I was 10. I loved it. I was a total geek. It was almost like band camp, and there were trophies involved. I'll
from
just
there
put
to
that there.
Tottenham Court Road and being obsessed with girls. What a shame, eh?
Exactly. But I love, I naturally, I sometimes, I will sometimes spend far too long analysing and arguing over the use of words and how important it is to, I don't know, evidence-based instead of evidence-informed, where other
Mm,
people just go, it's not important. And I think it's healthy for people to question the words they're using on their website and the impact that can have
yeah,
on the readers. So if it doesn't come naturally for you, somebody who is experienced in that, they can solve your problem like that just by saying,
yeah,
put this word in, like you just said. I mean, as soon as you said, I don't work the same as other therapists, I think it's a massive danger with runners because runners are so used to being let down because a lot of the stuff they're given doesn't work to the extent that they don't trust therapists. They don't, I mean, we've got a whole world now that doesn't even trust science. So, I mean, it's pretty tricky out there at the moment. So if you start saying, I do this slightly differently, they're going to think, here we go, another
the
advertising gimmick
wacko.
here.
Yeah,
So yeah, you can't start comparing yourself to other people. You just got to say what we do here is,
yeah,
and we'll be working with you. And yeah, just not even suggest that have evolved or changed or modified
mm,
yourself. You don't need an evidence-informed stamp on your website, or yeah. I mean, it's your territory. It's all about speaking and the coaching and the listening, and the clients and the patients won't care. A lot of this worry comes out of you, I think.
yes,
They just want to see an end to their pain or run faster or
yeah.
so it's yeah.
No, you're right. I mean, you know how much I love Joanne Elphinston's work, and something she repeatedly says to people: it's not about you.
Mm.
It's about the client in front of you and what works for them. And of course, with this approach, there will be some people for whom that approach is never going to work. And it's hard when you're starting out in a new business. I work with a lot of people setting up new businesses with this approach, and they're from worried they're going to put some people off, which they will, but they've got to if they're ever going to get to the place where they're really working in a way that feels um, like it's with integrity for them, I think, and the way they believe is best for the clients.
Definitely, yeah. That's a very healthy reflection. And that is part of the struggle is probably whether you've done a degree or diplomas or certification, everything was based on you. You're the fixer,
Mm,
you got the white coat on, you've got the power. And so it's no surprise that suddenly people are starting to tell you that it's not all about you, it's about the client. And in your heart, you're thinking, well, obviously it is. Why did I believe? Why did I pay that money where they made it all about me? It's not about me at all. But as with everything, it's a behavior change, which is easier for some people than others, which is why I think sometimes mentorship and collaborating again
mm,
is so important because you need someone to help just support you and listen to you and allow you to talk and unpeel the layers. And eventually you'll get rid of that kind of cloud of doom or that worry off your shoulders, not because someone's fixed it for you, but because they've just listened. And everything we should be doing with a client, that's what therapists need
mm.
to be doing with each other. I think that's the power of collaboration. That's where you can find your peace, inner peace, just by having someone there supporting and listening.
Yes. So you're starting to do it, Matt, but talk more, if you would, about then how this directly relates to clinician wellbeing. People might be listening to this and thinking, well, gosh, that sounds hard, and I don't know how to do that approach, and it sounds like it takes longer and is a new skill set, and this doesn't sound like it's going to aid my wellbeing. In fact, it's worrying me a bit.
I
How
know.
does all of this actually support, even if it's in the longer term, how, in your experience, does it support clinicians feeling better actually and feeling more well, not overwhelmed and burnt out?
I think I think one of the best ways to get rid of that sensation of this sounds like more work for me is put yourself, whether it's through a course or whether through a professional association or something, put yourself in the company of other people who are either going through it or have been through it. It's the same old kind of cliche, isn't it? Where if you put 20 people in a room with a problem, everyone decides I'm just going to go out with my problem, or everyone's got the same problem. It's if you have everybody together, then you'll realize a lot of the fear you've generated is because you feel you're alone and you don't know what to do. So I think working with others, listening to others can be really good. And that should really be the emphasis in any course you go on. And a lot of forward thinking courses these days are about it. The person who's running it will take great pleasure in taking a step back. And I do it on my course and just letting however many delegates there
Mm.
are there talking amongst each other, because that's where the real learning and reflection and everything, all the beautiful stuff that comes out of the information happens. So I would encourage people to do that. And also, I mean, it's ironically in healthcare, we probably spend more money on CPD than any other kind of profession. We're continuously being told we need to do it, and we've got imposter syndrome because guess what? A lot of the stuff we're doing doesn't help our clients, so we get nervous because of that. So we have to pay more money, and this is vicious circle. But I really think we've reached now in 2025. I'm so happy that I can honestly say that there's lots of options out there of quality CPD where, yes, you'll pay some money, but you'll come out with not just a skill with your hands or another way of assessing someone. You'll come out with
Mm.
an outlook, a new mindset, which foundation in the true sense of the word, it'll be like the roots, which will allow you as an individual. That's how all CPD should be really devised
Yeah.
anyway, really. So it's and they're not too difficult to find these people. I mean that's my job. If you listen to the sports this isn't a advert, by the way, Jack. This is if you listen to the Sports Therapy Association podcast, all the people I talk to, I've got my biases. Sometimes I've thought about purposely having a guest who I don't really agree with that much, but I think that wouldn't be what I'm about. So all of my guests are delivering courses and things and information which is done with that paramount important thing of allowing
Mm.
the therapists and the delegates to take it on board and then flourish. All you're doing
Yeah.
is empowering in the true sense of the word this incredible person who wants to help others, and you're giving them a few little tweaks and tools just to already change the power they've got to do that. And that's what it should be. And it
I
is that,
so agree.
I think.
I so agree with that, Matt, and thanks for articulating it so beautifully. I often think back to when I was a young physio, going on lots of courses, and you know, at times being unkind to myself, I've said I was arrogant because I refused always to take the course wholesale and apply it. And maybe there was a bit of arrogance or exuberance of youth, but it was just it wasn't actually a decision. It's just that was my behavior trait to listen to people, um, probably not consciously, but subconsciously think, okay, what are the principles here? I'll learn those. I'll make sure I understand the principles, and then I will go out into the world and I'll basically do it my way. And I don't know why that was my natural approach, but it was, and I totally agree with you that that's a much more respectful to teach more overtly, expecting that from the people who've paid you money and come to listen to you. I think is a much more respectful way to teach, as you say, to to respect and trust that these people in front of you are highly intelligent people with a great understanding of their own world and their own clients. And you're there, as you say, to teach a foundation, and not a foundation in terms of a whole world of, not a foundational layer that they can
Mm.
then go and build on. And probably have insights that you yourself would never have had. And, hopefully you'll learn from them one day when you see how they're applying it as well. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that type of education is a really sensible thing to look for. And I think that in some ways will counter that sense of imposter syndrome, because if you are just taking on a guru's specifics, how can that possibly apply perfectly in your own world? And then you think it's you, don't you? You think you've applied it wrong or misunderstood or something. Um, yeah, I totally agree with you. Could I ask you, perhaps more from your own personal experience, when you have applied these behavior change coaching approaches with clients, what's your own personal experience of how you feel yourself, compared to how you used to feel with a client? And again, thinking about this idea of well-being, what's your personal experience been of applying these approaches?
I think, I mean, as a clinician, one of the reasons I feel confident in delivering courses and stuff, because I've been there as a clinician and I know that for a good chunk of time working in a multidisciplinary clinic, I had the sensation that 50% of my clients were not actually getting better thanks to me. I
Mm,
could felt it. And I think a lot of therapists, well, not all therapists, but I think all therapists probably have got 50% of their clients not getting better.
yeah.
Now, how much of that is due to the fact that you are delivering kind of information that's not helping that much, or how much is due to the fact that the clients are just simply doing their own thing and you just haven't established that alliance? I don't know. But the fact is, I think as soon as you recognize that and accept it and start thinking, okay, how can I make things better then? What can I do? What can I change? Just basically start thinking inwards. Then it just
Mm,
takes a whole weight off your shoulders, because whilst you're trying to maintain this Superman or super person kind of cloak on at the door, come in, I will fix you on my couch. And it's like inside your heart, there's a little voice always, which is kind of going, you don't know what you're doing. Just fake it, fake
mm,
it.
mm,
People say fake it till you make it, and then you realize you're never making it. You're always having to fake it, sort of thing. So I think that's in our profession, especially in healthcare, because I think most people, I said it before, who enter healthcare are doing it through altruistic reasons. You
mm,
really do, you're doing it for the thank yous, for seeing the differences, for making a difference. You're not really doing it for the money, because you're not going to make that much money. It's not your
mm,
driving force. You've arrived at this stage in your life because you want to help people.
mm,
So I think that, as we've discussed before, that puts a whole load of onus on your shoulders and stress. So once you turn things around and take that cape off and realize that all you are is a soundboard, you're a chance for this person coming in to feel comfortable, relaxed, maybe the first time in a decade that somebody actually hasn't been through what they've gone through, because that's kind of
mm,
obviously the difference, isn't it? Empathy and sympathy and stuff, but they are listening. And this is where the skills come into it, I think. I mean, I did when people ask me about CPD, I'm not all of it, because again, there's a guru status with it, but motivational interviewing, I think, for the right person at the right time can open up all
Mm.
sorts of ideas. And there's nice examples of skills which you wouldn't have known unless someone told you about it,
Yeah.
with things like affirming and reflecting and some of the kind of almost like sneakier things of, I know the one I always remember was when you're listening to a client, and we talk about active listening, and they're unrevealing everything and thinking, yeah, this is easy. All I've got to do is sit here and now and again put my hand over my mouth and not say anything. But then when you do say something, I love the point. It was with Dr. Gary Mendoza, and I hadn't heard this before, but it was like when you are reflecting or showing an affirmation, reflecting in particular, the idea is you just repeat what the client said so that they can tell that you're listening. But if
Mm.
you go up at the end, it turns into a question because that's what questions do. So if you go,
Yeah.
oh, so you really can't handle not going for a PB at the end of your park run? Now that, because it's a question, is enough for the person who is just about unpeeling themselves to stop, because the focus is now on I've been asked a question and it's gone. Okay, and those layers are going to start going back on again. And if all you
Mm.
just simply do, it's just the one in a lots of examples of how just having someone share this with you can change everything. If you just go down at the end, oh, so you find it difficult in part ones not to go for the PB the whole time. That's enough for the person to tick the box saying, wow, this person's actually listening to me, but still continue their train of
Mm.
thought. You haven't invaded what they were thinking of. And that's just one example of such a nice technique which you can get. And it makes such a difference because now suddenly your patients are staying in their world, they're revealing everything you need. And there's plenty
Yeah.
more, which is why if people are stuck and they like something else, and I've recommended it to some people, I'm careful to say it's not right for everybody and watch out because there are some terrible videos of MI out there and stuff, but it's enough to make you realize there's some skills I haven't got yet that could really make my life easier. And they're not,
Mm.
it's not rocket science.
No,
So yeah, I think
absolutely.
yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. It was a bit of a tangent, but
I can't even remember what my question was, so don't worry about it.
it was,
Um,
yeah, it was how to take the pressure off whether it works. I think it does, and often quite quickly, as long as you choose the right avenues of exploration and get rid of
yes.
this cape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've written down two phrases that I love that you just said, and I'm going to steal them if that's all right, Matt.
You're welcome to.
Um, I
They're not
think
mine.
they'd be, no, they are yours because they were within your sentences. I'm just not even sure that you knew you'd said them. You said this, you are a chance for somebody to feel better. And I think, gosh, if we all said that to ourselves before we went into the treatment room, I am a chance here for this person to feel better. I love the choice of the word chance because it doesn't, there's no guarantee, and that doesn't mean you absolve yourself of all responsibility, but it does mean that you just recognize that you are a chance, and you, that might mean you're the whole solution. It might mean you say one word which means something to them that day and triggers another avenue with some other person or experience. But yeah, you are a chance. That's how I'm going into this room, that I am a chance for this person to feel better. And then just at the end there, when you said you one of your aims in your communication is not to invade their, I think you said to invade their thinking. I mean, what a great I think that's a great phrase, which I haven't heard anybody else say about not just active listening, but also communicating when you're trying to draw things out. You're not going in to invade, you are going in to open up and help that person explore their own territory, not to invade their territory. Probably slightly provocative language, given what's going on in the world these days. But yes, if we were all going in to explore rather than invade in many contexts, that would be a great thing.
I think it's
So
a good word, invade, and hearing you say it because it is quite strong. It's emotive, but in effect, that is what you're doing.
yeah.
That person, it's a very personal thing. That a person might not have been opening up at all with their loved ones, their families. They could have
Mm.
just been crying by themselves. But if you're doing it right, then they could. It really is. If you suddenly come in with a question, and even though it's well intending, it invades their thoughts. It destroys them. Then they don't open
Yeah.
up anymore, and it's like it is an invasion. It's not
Mm.
yeah, not a willing
Yeah, not with
invasion. We're not
malice,
talking
but
Putin here, but we're talking
no.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. And in fact, I mean, this isn't my phrase. I learnt it from a coaching mentor I had. But on my assessment forms, when I'm coaching a client, one of my prompts for my note taking is exploring the territory. And you know, this coaching mentor taught me this phrase. She said, "Stay horizontal as long as you can. Before at some point you can need to go vertical because you'll find the critical issue." Or point for discussion, and that's when you go down. But you don't rush to get there. You stay horizontal and you explore the territory for as long as possible. And now what you've just said, equally, do not invade that territory. Literally go and
It's
explore
nice.
with them. I love it. So, some really lovely things come out in this conversation, Matt. And you're such a busy person. You're always doing lots of fabulous things, lovely things, and I know you've got that kind of mind that's always looking to the next thing. So, what is next for you? Is there anything on the horizon that you are yet aware of?
No, I'm enjoying. I mean, thanks to like our friend in common, Anna Maria Mazzieri, she's really good at.
Mm,
Everyone's kind of says, "Oh, I've got massive imposter syndrome." Everyone kind of says it these days. It's almost like a buzzword which you can't say anymore. But
mm,
it's only because of her pushing me and saying, "No, Matt, courses are slow. People are doing everything online now." So she's a wonderful person in my life who goes, "Matt, just persevere with it. You've got a great message. You deliver it really
yeah.
nicely. People need it. Just because they're not flocking up to go on your courses doesn't mean you've got to stop." And that's great and I think I like saying that out loud because whoever you are, and I'm sure you would admit it as well, we all need certain people in our life who do guide us and give us a little bit of a push
Yeah.
sometimes, and from different angles. We all need different kind of types of help, but yeah. So I'm still persevering with that. It's a hard slog, as I'm sure you know. We live
Mm,
in a world now where everything is catch up on demand videos. I'm
yeah.
still very much champion learning through face-to-face contact. I think it's massively important. The same as when I talk about collaboration in this episode, I'm talking about face-to-face collaboration. I'm talking about meeting up with somebody, shaking their hand, getting that alliance with your fellow therapist, not just talking on Twitter. I mean, that can be a nice introduction, or I know, well, definitely not Twitter, but not just talking on some other better social media
Mm,
platform. But you need to meet up with these people, and
yeah.
that's when again the layers will come off, and you'll get that. But it's yeah, so I'm still persevering with that, and I get such a kick. I had a wonderful. What I really liked about my recent course in Manchester at Jack's place, actually, in Choose Health, was I had a degree sports scientists, we had a podiatrist, we had a couple of physios, we had a massage therapist, and it was just and again, I'm sitting back. I've opened up a little dialogue for them, and they just sat back and let them crack on with it. And then that's just my bliss. I can have a little look, and that's when I learn about is
Mm,
this working now? Are they getting on like I planned? Is it going right? But it was such a nice example of multidisciplinary. It was so
yeah.
easy then to talk about multidisciplinary care and patient focus because they'd all been doing it and they'd all been embracing each other. And it was just traditionally different hierarchies of levels of knowledge, but they were all enthralled when the massage therapist was talking about, how touch can help this and that. And they were all it was wonderful. So I do that more than anything out of for my own personal satisfaction and development. But we're looking at again, through the Sports Therapy Association podcast, we're looking at more regional events to try and reach more people. Accessibility is a big thing on our list this year. So we're going to try and do them around the country. Still, the same as you after Therapy Expo, I was a little bit this year. This is the best way, but the fact is, there's still 4 or 5 thousand people who walk through the door, so I'm still involved with that. And actually, I sit on a panel of advisory people who there's a good vibe there. The message is
Yeah.
still multidisciplinary. I had attended a meeting the other day, and it was good information coming out. There was a unification of different disciplines and a common knowledge. So I'm still very much want to be part of that and to help that develop
Good.
into something as good as it can be. So,
And you told me about something which I thought sounded great just before we came on air about
oh yeah,
where you're going to take your podcast. I love that idea. Do you want to share
I
that?
forgot about that. You got such a good memory, such a good hostess.
For now.
Yeah, no, I've felt people who aren't aware that the Sports Therapy Association podcast came out of COVID, basically, like so many other kind of improved communication kind of fountains of knowledge and that. And so now we're like 235 weeks in, and I've managed to have such incredible guests, like including yourself and Joanne, and every week is just a bliss for me. I look forward to it. I wake up in the morning and go, yes, today's Tuesday. I
Mhm.
can't wait. And I'm just as enthralled when I finish with it. But I'm just conscious that it's every week, and I'm not practicing what I preach. I'm putting out this information. And I tell people you have to reflect and think about it. And every week is too much. So what we've taken decision now is I'm going to stop having guests for a while, and just I'm inviting clinicians from any discipline just to come into the show as long as they've got a decent Wi-Fi connection. That's all. Just come and have a little chat with me and talk about a particular episode which resonated with them, which affected their practice. And I think there's so much good that can come out of that because it'll be great for the clinician who basically has the confidence to come onto the show and talk about it. It will be absolutely adored by listeners because people love hearing real life clinicians
Yeah.
coming in and talking about their experiences. And also, it'll give us a chance to actually highlight and reflect on some of the amazing 200 odd episodes which we've had and bring
Mm,
them up to the front as well. Some of which have evolved. I'll be inviting some guests back to kind of show how what they said 3 or 4 or 5 years ago might have
yeah.
changed. But it's all about reflection, isn't it? An evolution of thought. So that's what I'm going to try and do for the next year, hopefully, on the podcast. Still do it every week, but it'll be a chance for a shorter 30-minute chat about yeah, topics that changed practice in the real world.
I love that. And that builds entirely on what you were saying about your principles for teaching. Yeah, you've put some information out there and now you're interested to see how people interpret it for themselves. And you know, like we said when we were talking about it just before we came on air, there'll probably be insights that come back that even the original guest talking about it hadn't sort of connections hadn't made themselves. I think you'll probably get much more value out of your content by getting other people's views back on it. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Then it
Right,
must be
let's
a
do
good idea.
it. And yes, another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get you to come and do your course at my multidisciplinary clinic. Mainly just because if Jack's had you up there, then I'm going to. But yeah, it would be fabulous. We're a similarly multidisciplinary team. Yeah, let's book that in. That would be great.
That would be amazing. I would love that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Where are you on the South Coast?
I am in Lancing, which is basically where people go when they realize they can't afford Hove anymore. They they realize they have to move across. It went through Shoreham and then along a bit. It always travels west for some reason. But yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of between Shoreham and Worthing. Lanzarote, we like to call it.
Lanzarote.
Mm.
Well, that's okay because that must surely mean that the vibe is coming your way. If
Oh,
everybody is moving out of Hove into or moving on from Hove, you've got to be the next best thing,
oh no,
next
it's
good thing.
lovely. No, I'm very lucky. It's by the sea, which I love. And yeah, that's fantastic. We're on the downs as well. So it's great for runners. You've got the choice of the beautiful seafront or going
Yeah,
up onto the hill. So it's yeah, it's an ideal location.
sounds gorgeous. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Fabulous discussion. Really enjoyed it. And yes, I'll look forward to us meeting in person when you come and run your course at Courtyard.
Amazing. No, thank you so much. It's just a pleasure listening to your voice, basically, but even better when the questions are so good. So thank you.
Have a lovely rest of your day and have a lovely weekend. Take care.
Same to you. Thanks.
Cheers, Matt. What a lovely conversation. That hour just flew by. I really enjoyed talking to Matt, and I love his insights into lots of things, but specifically his attitude to how to conduct education, how to be respectful when you're teaching people. And I really loved his slant on working with runners and the impact that mental health and emotional, social aspects are inevitably and of course going to have on runners' performance. If you, on hearing that, would love Matt to come to your clinic or to your hospital or organisation and deliver that course, then please do get in touch. I can't believe, having heard the way that he delivers that, the style he delivers it, that you wouldn't want to be a part of that. So do go and check Matt's website out. I should have asked him at the end for contact details, but I'll make sure those are in the notes. Get in touch and get him to come and share his wisdom or share his foundation with you. Also, unashamed personal plug. If you are intrigued by the types of coaching conversations we were talking about, if you don't know already by now, Joanne Elphinston and I are running a course later this year in June called Coaching Unpeeled. and it's designed specifically to introduce coaching principles that can be applied directly in your clinical world. And there's some theory in the course, but it's also very practical. There's going to be lots of opportunity to help you bring up patient scenarios and in fact go away and practice with your own patients and clients, because it's all very well talking about these types of conversations. It's only when you experience conducting them and hearing what comes back when you use these interesting and powerful communication techniques that the method really starts to bed in. So I will also include some information on that course and how you can get involved in that if you're interested. So remember, the reason why all these things are important, the reason why we spend so much time on this podcast talking about your own well-being and how making changes in the clinical world are not only better for patients, but we're interested in the ones that are better for you. The reason we do that is because you matter. You are absolutely front and center, a part of delivering the services. If you are not well, then the service is not well and is not progressing in the way that we talked about on this podcast. So please do remember, the reason why all of that is important is because you matter.